This inspection is mandatory!
That's my child's bedroom!
You don't need permission, Linda Crawford said, tapping her clipboard like it was a gavel. The bylaws give me authority. I felt the heat rush my ears as the tyrant in heels smiled, already halfway turned toward my side yard. Behind her, a patrol car idled, lights off, engine ticking like a clock counting down something bad. I said quietly, "That window is an emergency egress rated for a child." The clipboard queen paused. Just a fraction. Enough. "I design failure investigations for a living," I added, calm as ice. "Every move you make here gets measured. If you've ever felt that surge right before standing up to someone who thinks they own you, subscribe and stay with me. This moment is the hinge everything swings on. My name is Ethan Walker. I was a widower before I was ready to be, and a father before I ever learned how fragile silence could be. Cedar Hollow Estates like to think of me as the quiet engineer at the end of Maple Loop. Linda Crawford preferred non-compliant. The board chair in Crimson Heels preferred fines. None of them knew why I never raised my voice. The smell of hot asphalt mixed with cut grass as Officer Ruiz shifted her weight beside me. Linda, no, the enforcer in crimson, cleared her throat, lips pressed thin. "Your daughter's window violates exterior uniformity. I was documenting. That was the word she chose for forcing open a 9-year-old's bedroom window from the outside. I kept seeing it in my head, the white frame flexing, the screen popping loose. Sophie's pink curtains breathing in and out like lungs that didn't belong to her anymore. That window wasn't just glass and vinyl. It was the place my wife used to stand every night, checking the latch twice because she worried about everything. It was where Sophie taped her glow-in-the-dark stars after the funeral because she didn't like sleeping in the dark anymore. And it was where my phone rang. "Dad," Sophie had whispered, voice shaking so hard it crackled. "There's someone at my window." The sound that followed, sirens in the background of a child's breathing, still scraped my chest raw. "Where are you watching from?" "Because I promise you, wherever it is, you know that feeling when your home stops being safe." The clipboard queen tried again. "This wouldn't have escalated if you'd just responded to the notice." I stared at the cruiser, at the way Officer Ruiz's hand hovered near her radio, at the way Linda Crawford avoided looking at the house now. "You escalated it," I said, "when you crossed into my child's bedroom." A breeze rattled the oak leaves. Somewhere a lawn sprinkler clicked on, cheerful and wrong. The tyrant in heels adjusted her blazer, red against the green like a warning sign no one wanted to read. "The HOA will proceed with enforcement," she said, voice tight, "with or without your cooperation." She didn't hear the word enforcement the way I did. To me it sounded like impact testing, like case numbers, like the start of reports that ended with phrases no parent ever forgets. Officer Ruiz finally spoke, soft but firm. "Ma'am, we're going to need to slow this down." Linda Crawford's jaw flexed. The board chair had pushed too far, and she knew it. I could see it now, the first hairline crack. Not victory, not yet, just the moment before pressure finds the fault. I stood there, barefoot on my own driveway, heart hammering, daughter inside with the curtains drawn tight, and understood something with absolute clarity. This wasn't about a window. It was about who gets to decide how safe a child is allowed to be in her own room. And I wasn't done measuring, but I knew better than to keep arguing in my driveway while Sophie hid behind her curtains. Officer Ruiz spoke low into her radio, and Linda Crawford, clipboard hugged to her chest, kept insisting the bylaws allowed access. The enforcer in crimson didn't like the word access sounding like break-in, so she softened it each time, like volume could rewrite reality. I went inside with my hands open where my daughter could see them. Sophie hesitated in the hallway, then rushed me and buried her face in my shirt, shaking. "It was right there," she said. "I heard the screen." "I know," I whispered. I checked the latch and the frame where the screen had popped loose. The metal was cold under my fingertips, like it had never belonged to us. When Officer Ruiz finished taking notes, she looked straight at Linda Crawford. "You can't force entry." The tyrant in heels smiled anyway, the kind that promised she'd try again when no badge was watching. By the time the cruiser rolled away and the board chair finally left, the sun was low and orange, staining the street like rust. The house felt too still, like every sound Sophie made might invite another shadow to the window. I told my daughter to stay in the living room where I could see her from the porch, hall light on, curtains drawn. Then I walked the community trail behind Maple Loop, the one lined with white stones the HOA loved to photograph for newsletters. Cedar Hollow looked calm from that path, trimmed hedges, identical mailboxes, the kind of place people moved into because they wanted peace, the kind of place where peace could be used like a leash. Near the footbridge, Darla Nguyen stood waiting, sleeves pulled over her hands. Her eyes flicked toward my house, then back to me. "You okay?" she asked. "Not really." Darla nodded once. "Linda Crawford's been roaming again." "Again?" The word came out rough. "The clipboard queen cornered the Millers over approved tint," Darla said. "Tried to open their patio door and called it an inspection. When Mr. Miller stopped her, she fined him for interfering." My stomach tightened. She tried to open a door. Darla started walking, and I matched her pace, gravel crunching under our shoes. "People keep thinking it's just their house," she said. "Pay the fine. It ends." It doesn't. The trail curved behind back fences. Curtains twitched. A porch light snapped on, even though it wasn't dark yet. That silent, nervous choreography made my skin prickle. An older couple stepped out from a side path. The woman's hands shook around her phone. "We heard sirens," the man said. "It was her, wasn't it?" "The board chair," Darla corrected softly. "She came to our back window," the woman whispered. Pressed her face to the glass like she was counting us. Something in my chest went cold. Air moved through the trees, but it didn't feel like relief. It felt like the neighborhood exhaling secrets it had held too long. The pattern sharpened in my head. Red blazer, clipboard, steady march through private space disguised as standards. I saw Sophie's window again, curtain, latch, the torn edge of the screen, and my hands curled into fists. "This isn't random," I said. "No," Darla replied. "It's habit." At the end of the trail, the clubhouse came into view, big windows glowing, tables inside arranged like a courtroom. That was where the tyrant in heels held her little trials and called them meetings. I felt anger tighten into something more useful. Complaints weren't enough. If I was going to stop the enforcer in crimson from coming back to my daughter's room, I needed leverage that didn't live in the HOA's world. And somewhere in Cedar Hollow, someone on the inside had to know exactly how far Linda Crawford had already gone. Tonight, I would find them. Night air cut through my hoodie as I left Sophie with Darla on my couch while my daughter clutched a pillow. I walked 2 streets over to Mark Ellison's place, the driveway in Cedar Hollow that still held a work truck. His garage door sat half open, lights off. Mark stood in the gap, shoulders rounded, rubbing a shop rag between his fingers until it twisted tight. When he noticed me, he flinched, then tried to hide it with a smile that didn't stick. "Ethan," he said, "you shouldn't be out." "I shouldn't have to be," I replied. "You're the HOA maintenance liaison, right?" His eyes darted to the street, then back. A quick nod. His knee bounced. The clipboard queen had trained him to listen for footsteps. "They think I work for Linda Crawford," he murmured. "They think that because you do," I said. "Linda Crawford forced open my 9-year-old's bedroom window." Mark's breath hitched. His hand rose to his mouth, dropped, rose again. His fingers shook. He looked past me toward the road like the enforcer in crimson might appear. "I heard the sirens," he whispered. "Then you know this wasn't enforcement," I said. "It was intrusion." He swallowed hard. "Linda, the board chair, believes she's protecting the neighborhood." "By scaring kids?" The words came out sharp. Mark winced and turned his face slightly away. "She doesn't hear herself anymore," he said. I let silence do the work. "Mark," I asked, "has she done things like this before?" His shoulders rose. He reached for a bottle on a shelf, unscrewed it, then realized his hands were shaking too much to drink. He set it down carefully. "I can't talk about board business," he said, automatic. "Board business ends at my property line," I said, "and it ends at my daughter's window." The tyrant in heels wasn't here, but Mark reacted like she was. His jaw worked. He pulled the rag until the fibers squeaked. "It's complicated," he muttered. "Make it simple," I said. "I'm asking for the truth." His eyes glossed. He stared at the concrete, then flicked another look at the street. "Linda Crawford keeps an access list," he said. "Gate codes, easements, which yards are easy to enter, Who has dogs, who doesn't? She calls it preparedness. Cold moved under my skin. Does she have authority for that? He let out a small, miserable laugh. Authority? She has confidence. The clipboard queen has confidence. A car rolled past at the end of the block. Mark tensed, shoulders up, rag clenched. When the tail lights vanished, he sagged. I've seen her do it, he admitted. Backyards, screens, door handles. She'll tug latches and claim it's an accident. Then she writes violations like she discovered a crime scene. My mind snapped back to Sophie's curtain lifting, the screen popping loose. Why didn't you stop her? I asked. Mark's face flushed. He blinked fast, fighting tears. Because she signs my contract, he said. Because she hints my wife's job at the clubhouse depends on being cooperative. Because when I pushed back once, she threatened to call the police and say I was sabotaging HOA property. I stepped closer, careful and steady. She's coming back, I said. If not to me, to someone else. Maybe an older couple. Maybe another kid. Mark's breath shuddered. The rag finally tore in his hands with a soft rip. I don't want this, he whispered. I don't want to be part of it. Then don't, I said. Help me draw the line. He nodded once, slow. I'll tell you what I know, he said. But not here. Linda Crawford drives the neighborhood at night. The tyrant in heels loves surprise visits. He pulled the garage door down with a shaky hand. Metal rattled. As I turned back toward my house, one truth burned clear. This wasn't a bold mistake. It was a system. That truth followed me back down Maple Loop, sticking to my ribs like smoke. When I stepped onto my porch, my phone buzzed. An HOA portal alert with a subject line that made my vision narrow. Final notice. Darla opened the door before I knocked. Sophie's asleep, she whispered, then saw my face. What now? I showed her the screen. The message was stamped with Linda Crawford's name like a signature across a bruise. A corrective action order, a deadline, and a number that looked less like a fine and more like a threat. Tonight? Darla breathed. By morning, I said. And it says they'll proceed with an inspection if I don't comply. I didn't let myself look down the hallway towards Sophie's room. I couldn't, not with that word inspection sitting in my throat like grit. Officer Ruiz had said, "You can't force entry." But the tyrant in heels had said something louder, "With or without your cooperation." I grabbed my keys. I'm going to the management office. At this hour? Linda Crawford doesn't sleep when she thinks she's winning. The HOA management company sat just outside the neighborhood gates, a low stucco box with tinted windows. The parking lot lights hummed, throwing hard shadows across the empty spaces. I went inside and pressed the counter call button. A chime rang behind a closed door. A man in a wrinkled button-down appeared, blinking. His name tag read, Greg. "Sir, we're closed. I'm here about an emergency enforcement action uploaded by Linda Crawford," I said. "She forced open my kid's bedroom window. Now she's threatening another inspection by morning." Greg's shoulders tightened at her name. "That's board business." "It became police business," I said, keeping my voice flat. "I need to know what authority she claims for physical entry." He hesitated, then turned to his computer. "I can't override the board chair." "I'm not asking you to," I said. "I'm asking you to show me what she wrote." A printer whirred. Greg slid a sheet toward me like it might bite. The same order I'd seen on my phone, now with extra teeth, daily fines, lien review, and mandatory compliance inspection as scheduled by the architectural chair. My hand stayed steady, but my pulse didn't. "She can't schedule entry," I said. Greg's eyes flicked toward the back office. "I'm not a lawyer. I'm a building envelope engineer," I said, "and I know what liability looks like when someone tampers with a child's emergency egress." He winced. "Look," he whispered, leaning closer. "The clipboard queen's been escalating violations for months. She says homeowners are hiding modifications. She wants photos, measurements, proof." "From inside bedrooms?" I asked. His mouth opened, then closed. He stared at the counter like it could save him. "She's not supposed to," he said quietly. "But she writes it like she is." My phone buzzed again as if on cue. Another portal update. Linda Crawford had added a note. "Inspection team authorized to access exterior openings." Exterior openings. A phrase for a dirty act. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. In my mind, I saw Sophie's small hands dialing 3 numbers faster than any adult would believe, and the dispatcher's voice cutting through terror. I read the order again, every loaded phrase shaped to make a normal person panic and pay. The enforcer in crimson wasn't just punishing me. She was building a pathway, papered up, official-looking, designed to make people fold before they realized the HOA had stepped into something dangerous. I slid the sheet back. "If she shows up again," I said, "the next call won't just be to 911. Greg swallowed. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the board chair picked the wrong house," I replied, and turned for the door. Behind me, the lobby lights buzzed like a warning. In my head, I could already hear phones ringing in offices Linda Crawford couldn't bully. I walked out into the parking lot with the door's buzz still in my ears and Greg's fear hanging behind the glass. The night air felt sharper here, like it had teeth. My keys dug into my palm as I crossed the asphalt, and I kept seeing Linda Crawford's words, "Inspection team authorized," like they were stamped on my daughter's forehead. My phone rang before I reached the car. Darla. "She's still asleep," Darla said, voice low. "But she asked if the police are coming back." I closed my eyes. "Tell her no. Tell her I'm handling it." A pause, then Darla's breath. "Ethan, don't do something reckless." "I'm not," I said. "I'm doing something accurate." When I started the engine, the dashboard glow painted my hands an ugly blue in the empty lot. I didn't drive home. Not yet. Home was where Sophie's room waited, and I couldn't walk past that hallway again until I had something stronger than anger. My office was 10 minutes away, in a quiet industrial strip where the streetlights didn't bother pretending to be friendly. The building was dark except for the security panel by the door. I swiped my badge, listened to the lock click, and stepped into the stillness of my firm's lab like it was a chapel. Fluorescents snapped on one row at a time. The smell of paper, plastic samples, and cold coffee hit me. On the wall above my desk hung the certification I'd earned after too many nights studying failure modes: water intrusion, structural fatigue, fire spread, egress compliance. Most people heard engineer and thought spreadsheets. Cities called us when something went wrong and nobody wanted to admit it. I dropped into my chair and pulled up code references I knew by heart but needed in black and white. Egress window requirements, minimum clear opening, hardware operation force, child safety provisions, tampering risk. The words weren't abstract tonight, they had a face. Sophie's. I played the scene back, not emotionally, professionally. The screen hadn't popped. It had been forced. The latch alignment was off now. If Linda Crawford's tug had warped the frame even slightly, that window might not open cleanly in an actual emergency. A fire, a smoke-filled hallway, a child trying to push out a stuck sash with small hands. My stomach rolled. I opened our incident template, the one we used when a homeowner asked for a safety assessment after a break-in or storm damage, and I started documenting. Time, conditions, likely mechanism, risk. What the board chair had done wasn't just rude. It was an interference with life safety equipment. My phone buzzed with a new HOA portal notification, like the clipboard queen could sense me thinking clearly. "Second notice uploaded," it read. I didn't open it. I already knew the tone. Smug, dismissive, certain the neighborhood belonged to her. Instead, I called Officer Ruiz's non-emergency number from the card she'd left. She answered on the second ring, tired but alert. "Officer Ruiz, it's Ethan Walker," I said, from Maple Loop, the window. "I remember," she replied. "How's your daughter?" "Shaken," I said, voice tight. "Listen, I need the incident number. I'm going to report this beyond the HOA." There was a pause, then the click of keys. "I can give you the case number," she said, "and I'll note that you're requesting documentation." "Thank you," I said, "because Linda Crawford is threatening another inspection by morning." Officer Ruiz exhaled. "That's not okay." "It's not legal," I said, "and it's not safe." When I hung up, the next move formed like a blueprint in my head. The tyrant in heels could hide behind bylaws all day, but she couldn't rewrite municipal code or insurance liability. If she damaged an egress window, that wasn't HOA territory, that was city territory. I opened a new email draft and typed 3 words that felt like a door unlocking: Building Safety Division. I stared at the words, Building Safety Division, until my eyes burned, then hit send before doubt could crawl in. The moment the email flew out, my phone lit up again. Linda Crawford, in the HOA portal, posting like she was narrating her own victory. Another inspection window scheduled, another warning about liens. The board chair wasn't just pressing me, She was training the neighborhood to accept fear as policy. I left the office with the air still smelling like toner and cold metal. In the car, I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles blanched. The road back to Cedar Hollow ran quiet and dark, the kind of quiet that made every thought echo. By the time I turned onto Maple Loop, my stomach felt like it was packed with stones. Darla was on my porch again, arms folded tight against the chill. Her face softened when she saw me, then tightened when she saw my expression. "Sophie woke up," she said. "She's pretending she's fine, but she keeps checking the curtains." That sentence hit harder than any fine. I walked inside and found my daughter sitting cross-legged on the couch with a blanket pulled to her chin, eyes too wide for that small face. The TV was on, volume low, but she wasn't watching. She was listening. "Hey, Bug," I said, forcing warmth into my voice. She nodded fast. "I didn't do anything wrong," she blurted. "I didn't open it." "I know," I said, sitting slowly so I didn't startle her. "You did everything right." Her lip trembled. "She said she could," Sophie whispered. "The lady outside. She said she had a key to the neighborhood." The tyrant in heels hadn't just touched a window. She'd planted a thought in a child's mind. Adults with clipboards can cross boundaries. I felt rage flare, sharp and clean, then settle into something colder. The clipboard queen wanted compliance. I was going to give her consequences. I stood and walked down the hall to Sophie's room. The nightlight glowed, casting stars across the ceiling. The curtains were closed, but I could sense the window behind them like a wound. I pulled the fabric aside and examined the frame again, this time with a small flashlight and the same steady hands I used on job sites. The screen's corner was bent. The latch sat a hair off center, just enough to make it catch. Not catastrophic yet, but wrong. Interference, tampering, risk. A knock sounded at the front door. 3 quick taps, too certain to be a neighbor. My blood chilled. I checked the peephole. Linda Crawford stood there in a red blazer that looked black under the porch light. Behind her, 2 men waited with tool bags and neutral faces, like hired muscle with plausible deniability. The board chair held her clipboard high, chin lifted, as if my home were already hers. I didn't open the door. I spoke through it, voice controlled. "It's late." "It's scheduled," the enforcer in crimson called back, tone syrupy with authority. "We're here to conduct the compliance inspection. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Sophie's footsteps padded behind me, small and hesitant. I turned, held up a hand, and she froze, eyes wide. "Go to the living room," I murmured. "Stay with Darla." Her gaze flicked to the door. "Is it her?" "Yes," I said, "but you're safe." When Sophie retreated, I pulled my phone from my pocket and hit record, screen glowing against my palm. I didn't announce it. I just documented the way I always did when truth might matter later. "I'm refusing entry," I said clearly through the door. "You have no authority to inspect the interior of my home or manipulate any openings. Leave my property." A sharp laugh came from the other side. "You're obstructing," Linda Crawford snapped. The clipboard queen's patience cracked, revealing something mean underneath. "If you don't cooperate, the HOA will take further action." I leaned closer to the door, voice low and deadly calm. "Further action is exactly what I'm counting on." I didn't wait. I dialed Officer Ruiz's non-emergency line again, thumb steady. As it rang, I stared at the peephole and watched the tyrant in heels shift her weight, impatient, confident, certain the neighborhood would back her. But this wasn't a neighborhood problem anymore. Tonight, it became an outside authority problem with a case number attached. The line clicked, and Officer Ruiz's voice came through my phone while Linda Crawford stood on my porch like she owned the air. I kept the camera rolling, thumb steady, heart punching at my ribs. "Officer, she's back," I said. "The board chair is at my door with 2 contractors. She's demanding an inspection." Ruiz's tone sharpened. "Don't open it. Stay inside. I'm dispatching a unit." Outside, the enforcer in crimson leaned toward the sidelight trying to catch a glimpse of me. Her clipboard rose and fell with each impatient breath. "Mr. Walker," the clipboard queen called. "This is a lawful directive. You're being recorded as non-compliant." I didn't answer. Sophie's small steps whispered behind me, and Darla's hand hovered at my daughter's shoulder like a shield. Headlights swept across the street. Linda Crawford stiffened. The two men with tool bags shifted, suddenly remembering they had licenses and reputations. Officer Ruiz arrived first, then another cruiser rolled in behind her. When Ruiz stepped onto my porch, Linda's smile turned brittle. "You can't interfere with HOA enforcement," the tyrant in heels said, voice bright enough to cut. Ruiz didn't raise her voice. "Ma'am, you are not entering this home. You are leaving the property. Now." Linda Crawford's mouth opened, then closed. I watched her weigh risk against ego. She snapped her clipboard down like a weapon she couldn't fire and turned sharply. "This isn't over," the board chair muttered as she marched off the porch. I held my breath until the red blazer vanished into the dark. Only then did my lungs remember how to work. Ruiz took my statement at the curb. She glanced at the bent screen photos on my phone and frowned. "Keep everything," she said. "If she comes back, call immediately." When the cruisers finally left and the street fell quiet again, my phone buzzed with a new message. "Mark Ellison, meet me now, not at my house." "She's circling." Darla read it over my shoulder, eyes widening. "Go," she whispered. "I'll stay with Sophie." 10 minutes later, I slid into a booth at a 24-hour diner off the highway, fluorescent lights buzzing and coffee smells soaking into everything. Mark was already there, hunched in the corner like he'd tried to fold himself smaller. His hands shredded a napkin into damp scraps. One leg bounced so hard the table trembled. He looked up, then away, jaw tight. "She came by my place," he said. "Right after yours. Linda Crawford asked where you went, like she was tracking you." My stomach tightened. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing," he blurted, then flinched. "I told her I hadn't seen you. She didn't believe me." He dragged a hand over his face, leaving a streak of grease across his cheek like he'd forgotten to wash. "Ethan, the clipboard queen's doing these inspections for a reason. It's not just control." I leaned in. "Then what is it?" Mark swallowed, eyes glossy. He kept flicking his gaze to the diner windows, to every passing pair of headlights. "She's trying to build a safety narrative," he whispered, "so she can pressure people through the insurer." My pulse slowed, turning cold. "Insurance?" Mark nodded, miserable. "She's been talking about an umbrella liability review. She thinks if she documents enough hazards, the carrier will back her and the city won't question her. She even bragged she'd cover the board if anyone got hurt." Anyone got hurt. Sophie's shaking hands flashed in my mind. Mark's voice broke. "I've seen her open windows, Ethan, not just yours, and I've got the name of the HOA's insurance broker. She keeps it on speed dial." The diner's hum seemed to fade, replaced by one clear, brutal truth. Linda Crawford wasn't just bullying, she was building a case, and Mark had just handed me the first lever that could snap her power in half. Mark's words hung between us like a live wire. The clipboard queen hadn't just been bullying families, she'd been collecting hazards to pressure the insurer. Mark slid a crumpled receipt across the diner table with a number scrawled on the back. "That's the broker," he whispered. "Paula Stein. Linda Crawford keeps her on speed dial." "You're sure?" I asked. He nodded too fast, eyes glossy, then wiped his palms on his jeans. "If the tyrant in heels finds out I told you, she'll bury me." "She won't," I said, keeping my voice low. "But you can't be seen with me again. Not until this is over." Mark's shoulders sagged, a tiny collapse of fear and relief. "What are you going to do?" I didn't give him the plan. I just stood, left cash on the table, and walked out under the lot lights with my mind already stacking moves like a checklist. By morning, Cedar Hollow Estates was back to its usual disguise. Sprinklers hissed on schedule, kids' bikes lay neatly on driveways. The board chair loved that illusion. Quiet streets meant quiet compliance. I drove past the clubhouse without slowing, past the stone sign that bragged about community standards, and headed downtown to the city building department. Inside, the lobby smelled like disinfectant and old paper. A metal detector beeped for someone else, and the sound made my shoulders tighten. I carried my phone, photos of the bent screen, and Officer Ruiz's case number, like they were weights pulling me forward. At the counter, a clerk in glasses glanced up. "Next." "My name's Ethan Walker," I said. "I need to report interference with a residential egress window and ongoing threats of unauthorized inspections." Her eyes sharpened at egress. "Room B12, she said after a call. "Mr. Hargrove." B12 was an office with a code book open on the desk and a hard hat on a hook. Mr. Hargrove was late 50s, gray mustache, posture like a man who'd walked too many fire scenes. He motioned me into a chair. "Start from the beginning," I told him, clean and factual. Linda Crawford forcing my daughter's bedroom window, the screen popping free, the latch now catching. Sophie calling 911 so fast it still made my throat tighten. The enforcer in crimson returning with contractors and calling it a scheduled inspection. Hargrove's jaw set. "HOAs don't have police powers," he said. "They don't get to manipulate life safety components. Not without consent, not ever." "I'm a building envelope engineer," I said. "If that sash binds during an emergency, it's not just fear, it's entrapment." He nodded once, slow. "You're thinking correctly." I slid my phone across his desk and played the porch video. Linda Crawford's voice filled the office, smug and certain. Lawful directive, non-compliant, further action. When it ended, Hargrove exhaled through his nose. "You've got her asserting authority she doesn't have," he said. "And you've got a child involved. That changes how fast we move." "What can you do today?" I asked. He tapped the code book. "We can open a complaint for unsafe practice and potential code interference. We can also notify the HOA's management company that a city file exists. Boards get brave when they think nobody outside their bubble is watching." A pulse of relief flickered in my chest, then steadied into resolve. "She's escalating," I said. "Liens, inspections, teams, she's building pressure." "And you're building documentation," he replied. "That's how you win without getting dragged into her game." At the counter, I signed the complaint. No secret stash of papers, no hidden files, just an official record with my name, Sophie's age, and Linda Crawford's actions described in plain language. The clerk stamped it and slid me a receipt number. Walking back into the daylight, I felt something shift. The clipboard queen had been writing her own rules inside Cedar Hollow. Now the city had opened a file with her name on it. Walking into the daylight, I felt something shift. The clipboard queen had been writing her own rules inside Cedar Hollow. Now the city had opened a file with her name on it, and Linda Crawford couldn't keep pretending this was just HOA business. I drove to the public library and booked a small conference room. I shut the door, set my phone on the table, and dialed Paula Stein, the insurance broker Mark had named. "Stein Risk Solutions," a brisk voice answered. "My name is Ethan Walker," I said. "I'm calling about Cedar Hollow Estates, about actions taken by HOA Vice President Linda Crawford." A pause. "Are you a board member?" "I'm a homeowner," I replied. "And I'm notifying you of a liability issue involving a child and an emergency egress window. There's a police incident number and a city building safety complaint." Her silence tightened. "Sir, I can't discuss policy details." "I'm not asking for details," I said. "I'm giving notice. Linda Crawford forced open my 9-year-old daughter's bedroom window from the outside. She returned later with contractors and demanded entry, calling it an inspection. The city opened a file because the window is an egress component. This behavior is ongoing." Paula's voice dropped into a different register. "Do you have documentation? Video, photos, and case numbers," I said. "I can email everything within the hour." "Send it to my compliance inbox," she replied. "Include the police incident number and the city complaint receipt." "I will," I said, "because the enforcer in crimson is threatening liens and inspection teams. If the HOA is encouraging physical manipulation of openings, that's safety exposure." "I understand," Paula said, and the call ended. I opened my laptop and wrote the email the way I wrote professional reports. Clean chronology, precise language, no emotion for her to twist. I attached the porch video where Linda Crawford declared her lawful directive. I attached close-ups of the bent screen corner and the latch sitting a hair off-center. I included Officer Ruiz's incident number and the building department receipt number. Then I called Darla. "I need names," I told her. "People who've had the board chair in their yard. Anyone who's seen the clipboard queen tug at screens, test handles, or push past boundaries." Darla didn't hesitate. "Give me an hour." While she started calling, I drafted a second message to the HOA management company, Greg's company. I didn't argue bylaws. I notified them that a police incident existed, that the city had opened a complaint, and that the broker had been informed. I wrote it like someone who expected it to be read by counsel. My phone buzzed with another HOA portal alert. Linda Crawford posted again, "Non-cooperation, immediate enforcement." I screenshot it, timestamp visible, and saved it without replying. Every new threat was another rung on the ladder I was building out of her own words. Darla called back fast, voice tight. 5 families, she said, and an older couple on Birch Court. They'll talk. One has footage of her in the yard. My throat went dry. They'll share it? They said yes, Darla answered, if you're the one asking. I gripped the edge of the table. Linda Crawford's power ran on isolation, one homeowner at a time, one frightened signature at a time. In this quiet room, I was building a chain she couldn't snap. I hit send on the insurance email and watched it disappear, like a stone dropped into deep water. I didn't celebrate. I forwarded the same packet to Building Safety Division, then texted Mark a single line, "It's moving." He replied with 2 words that made my stomach drop, "She's panicking." Outside the conference room, pages turned and keyboards clicked, normal life happening inches away while my daughter's world waited on what strangers decided before she tried something worse. Soon, the ripples would reach the tyrant in heels. I felt it in the way my phone stayed too quiet afterward, like the air before a storm. I drove back toward Cedar Hollow with my jaw clenched and my eyes scanning every driveway, every sidewalk, every red blur that could be Linda Crawford in motion. At the neighborhood gates, the security arm lifted slow. The stone sign looked the same as always, but the calm didn't feel real anymore. It felt staged. I turned onto Maple Loop and saw Darla's car still in my driveway. Relief hit first, then a deeper fear that I'd get used to needing backup. Inside, Sophie was at the kitchen table, coloring with her shoulders hunched, as if she could shrink away from the world. She glanced up and forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Did she go away?" she asked. "For now," I said, sitting beside her, "and I'm making sure it stays that way." Darla leaned close, voice low. "The Birch Court couple called me," she whispered. "Linda Crawford came by again. Not inside, but she walked their fence line like she was counting boards." "Was she alone?" "No," Darla said. "Greg from management was with her. He looked sick." My stomach tightened. Greg had printed her order like he was passing a hot coal. Now he was walking beside the clipboard queen like an escort. That meant pressure was already being applied. My phone buzzed, right on cue. "Unknown number," I answered. "This is Paula Stein," the voice said, clipped and professional. "Mr. Walker, I received your materials." I stepped onto the back patio, away from Sophie's ears. The afternoon air smelled like cut grass and chlorine from someone's pool. "Thank you for calling," I said. Paula didn't waste words. "I'm escalating this to the carrier's risk unit. If a board member is physically manipulating windows and threatening unauthorized inspections, that's exposure. I need one thing: confirmation this is ongoing and not a one-time incident." "It's ongoing," I said. "Linda Crawford returned last night with contractors and demanded entry. Police responded. The city has an open complaint." "Send me the additional incident details," Paula replied. "Also, are there other households affected?" Darla's list flashed in my mind. "Yes," I said. "Multiple." Paula exhaled once, controlled. "Understood. You should expect contact from the risk adjuster and Mr. Walker. Do not engage directly if the board chair shows up again. Let the authorities handle it." "I plan to," I said. When I went back inside, Darla was staring out the front window. "She's coming," she murmured. I followed her gaze. At the end of the street, a red blazer moved between shadows like a flare. Linda Crawford walked with purpose, clipboard tucked tight, and behind her trailed 2 board members I recognized from newsletters, faces that never looked anyone in the eye. The enforcer in crimson had brought witnesses, like she could make intimidation look like procedure. My pulse hammered, but my voice stayed steady. "Darla, take Sophie to the back room." Sophie's chair scraped softly. "Dad." "I've got you," I said, and watched her disappear down the hall. Linda Crawford stopped at the edge of my lawn and raised her clipboard as if it were a flag. She didn't step onto my porch this time. She stayed public, theatrical. The tyrant in heels had shifted tactics. "I'm here to post notice," she called, loud enough for windows to hear. I stepped outside, phone in my pocket recording audio, my body positioned between her and my house. "Post it," I said. "From there." Her smile was bright and wrong. "You've contacted outside parties," the clipboard queen said. "That's harassment of the HOA. I felt heat rise, then I let it drain away. "It's accountability," I replied. Linda Crawford's eyes narrowed. The board chair held a paper up like a charge sheet. The board will convene an emergency compliance hearing, she announced. 48 hours. Attendance required. One of her companions shifted, uncomfortable. I recognized the flicker of doubt. That was new. I took the notice without touching her hand, held it up so she couldn't claim I refused. "See you there," I said. As she turned to leave, her phone rang. I saw the screen light her face. Her stride faltered. The enforcer in crimson glanced back at my house like it had teeth. Whatever Paula Stein had triggered, it was reaching her, fast. Whatever Paula Stein had triggered, it was reaching her, fast. Linda Crawford's phone lit her face, and for the first time the clipboard queen didn't look smug. She snapped the screen dark, squared her shoulders, and walked off like she could outpace consequences. 48 hours later, I stood outside the Cedar Hollow clubhouse with the notice in my pocket and a knot in my stomach. Headlights swept the parking lot as cars poured in, one after another, like the neighborhood had been summoned by something urgent and unseen. Inside, the air was too warm, heavy with perfume, coffee, and the faint sting of anger. Folding chairs filled the hall. A low murmur rolled across the room, interrupted by sharp whispers when someone spotted me. Darla squeezed my arm near the entrance. "They're here," she said. "Birch Court, the Millers, 5 more." Across the rows, I saw tight faces, crossed arms, and hands gripping phones, like everyone was finally ready to remember everything. I nodded and took a seat near the aisle. Sophie was with my sister across town, far away from this circus. I refused to let the tyrant in heels perform within reach of my child. A gavel knock echoed, wood on plastic. Linda Crawford sat at the front in her red blazer, the board chair framed by a banner that read Community Standards. 2 board members flanked her, and Greg from management sat off to the side, hands clasped so hard his knuckles were white. "We're calling this emergency compliance hearing to order," Linda announced, voice bright and practiced. "Homeowner Ethan Walker has repeatedly refused lawful inspection and has interfered with HOA operations." A ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. Someone muttered, "Lawful?" Another voice hissed, "That's the guy with the police." Linda's eyes snapped toward the sound. The enforcer in crimson lifted her chin. "This is not a discussion. This is enforcement." I stood slowly, letting the room settle. My phone was in my palm, not raised, just present. "You forced open my 9-year-old's bedroom window," I said. "That's why the police came. That's why you're here tonight, pretending this is routine." The clipboard queen smiled thinly. "I documented an exterior violation. By manipulating an emergency egress window," I replied. "A life safety component. You bent the screen, you altered the latch alignment. If there had been smoke in that hallway, my child could have been trapped." A woman in the 3rd row gasped. An older man stood halfway, then sat back down, eyes hard. Linda Crawford snapped her clipboard open. "You're making accusations without authority." Then the double doors at the back opened, and the room turned as one. A man in a city-issued jacket stepped in, followed by a woman carrying a slim folder. Greg's face went pale. Linda froze mid-breath. "Building Safety Division," the man said. "I'm Inspector Hargrove. We have an active complaint involving interference with an egress window and alleged unauthorized inspections." The murmur surged into a roar of whispers. I felt heat flood my chest, not triumph, but the relief of reality entering the room. Linda tried to recover. "This is a private association meeting," the tyrant in heels snapped. "You can't—" "Yes, we can," Hargrove said, calm and unmovable. "When life safety elements are involved, jurisdiction doesn't stop at your bylaws." The woman beside him stepped forward. "And I'm with the carrier's risk unit," she added, eyes on Linda Crawford. "We receive documentation. If board members are conducting physical inspections or manipulating openings, your coverage may be jeopardized." Silence dropped over the chairs. Someone behind me whispered, "Insurance?" like it was both prayer and threat. Linda Crawford's mouth opened, then closed. The clipboard queen's cheeks flushed. "This is harassment," she forced out. Hargrove's gaze didn't blink. "No, ma'am, this is oversight." All around me, neighbors straightened. The room didn't belong to the board chair anymore. It belonged to everyone she'd tried to scare into quiet. All around me, neighbors straightened. The room didn't belong to the board chair anymore. It belonged to everyone she'd tried to scare into quiet, and that shift hit Linda Crawford like a door slamming. Inspector Hargrove didn't raise his voice, but the silence he carried was heavier than any gavel. Effective immediately, no board member or contractor acting on behalf of Cedar Hollow Estates is to manipulate, open, remove, or test any residential window, door, or opening without the owner's consent, he said. Any attempt to do so will be treated as a safety interference complaint and referred accordingly. The enforcer in crimson bristled. You're criminalizing enforcement. You're mislabeling intrusion, Hargrove replied. Those aren't the same thing. The carrier rep flipped open her folder. And for the record, she added, our risk unit is issuing a notice of potential coverage limitation if these practices continue. We'll require a written corrective policy, board training documentation, and a point of contact who is not the architectural chair. A hiss moved through the crowd, the sound people make when they realize power has a price tag. Greg's shoulders sagged like he'd been holding his breath for months. Linda Crawford tried to stand taller, but the clipboard queen's hands shook on the paper. This meeting is out of order, she snapped. We can vote to remove homeowners for harassment. Darla rose before I could. Vote on what? She called, voice steady. On forcing open kids' windows? A woman near the back lifted her phone. I've got her on video in my yard, she said. Another voice joined, then another, building into a wave. Screens held up, timestamps offered, stories spilling out that had been swallowed for years. The tyrant in heels looked left and right, searching for the old fear. It wasn't there. One of the board members beside Linda, usually silent, cleared his throat. Linda, he said, not meeting her eyes. We're suspending enforcement actions until council reviews this. Effective now. Her head snapped toward him. You can't. He swallowed. We can, and we are. The carrier rep leaned in. If you don't, your premiums will reflect it, or you'll be non-renewed. That did it. The room exhaled, not because anyone loved bureaucracy, but because bureaucracy was finally aimed at the right target. Linda Crawford gathered her papers too fast, dropping one. She didn't bend to pick it up. The board chair in crimson strode out through the side door, heels clicking like a countdown that had run out. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. The outside world had stepped into Cedar Hollow, and it wasn't leaving. When the meeting broke, I walked into the night with Darla beside me, cold air washing the sweat off my palms. My car smelled faintly of sunscreen and crayons. Sophie's life, ordinary and precious. I drove home slower than usual, letting my heartbeat settle. Inside, I checked the hallway first. Sophie's nightlight still painted stars across her ceiling. I went to her window, touched the latch, and felt it catch, just slightly, exactly where Linda had forced it. I fixed it with careful pressure and a quiet prayer I didn't know I still believed in. Sophie padded in behind me, hair mussed, eyes cautious. Is she gone? She whispered. For good, I said. And if she ever comes back, people with real authority will be the ones answering the door. My daughter leaned into my side, and I realized the win wasn't the meeting, or the insurer, or the city file. The win was my child trusting her bedroom again. Outside, porch lights flicked on across Maple Loop, and I knew parents were locking windows with less fear because Cedar Hollow had learned boundaries. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from.